21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
I want you to imagine walking into a maximum security prison, and you're walking into a basement and it's got some really crummy fluorescent lighting. And when you walk into the room, all concrete, dirty and dingy, there are 15 cages in a semicircle around you. In each one of those cages, a man sits, shackled hands and legs. They're all murderers. They're all gang members. My job is to teach them how to stop prison violence. And I did it. And I did it for 10 years. And out of that, I have learned how to help people stop any fight or argument, stop having difficult conversations, and build instant loyalty and trust. And it all comes down to how you listen. So my name is Doug Noll, and I have an interesting journey. Today, I'm a lawyer-turned-peacemaker, but it wasn't always that way. I grew up in affluence in Southern California with many disabilities. And I was partially blind, 2 club feet, couldn't walk until I was 3 or 4 years old, left-handed, bad teeth. I was a mess, and nobody really knew what to do with me. So I wasn't given a lot of comfort or help. And most coaches wouldn't mess with me because I was unathletic and difficult to work with from a physical point. Anyways, I overcame all of that over many, many years, ended up going to Dartmouth College, came back from college and went to law school, graduated from law school and did well in law school, ended up clerking a year for a judge, and then entered private practice in September of 1978 and tried my first civil jury trial in late October 1978. And for the next 22 years, that's what I did. I tried lawsuits. I was a commercial and business trial lawyer, tried over 200 cases to verdict or judgment. Along the way, I picked up the martial arts, and then I started studying Tai Chi. And I learned something really interesting in Tai Chi. The softer you are, the stronger you are, the more vulnerable you are, the more powerful you are. And it took a long time for that paradox to seep into me, but it finally did, until finally in the 1990s, I was in a courtroom trying a case, cross-examining somebody, and the thought came to me, what the heck am I doing in here? After that trial, I had a river trip planned up in Idaho, a whitewater river trip, and I spent the week in my raft thinking about how many people I really served as a trial lawyer. And I decided that I had only served 5 people after 20 years. And I didn't want to do that anymore. Mine was about service, not about only helping 20 or 30 people in my lifetime. But I didn't know what I was going to do. So when I came back, I drove down out of the mountains to my office, and I heard a public service announcement for a new master's degree being offered in peacemaking and conflict studies. And that caught my attention. And ultimately, I enrolled. And so for 3 years, I was a full-time master's degree student, a 3/4 time law professor at our local law school, and a full-time trial lawyer. I couldn't reach agreement with my partners over the direction I wanted to take in my practice. And so I walked out with 1 week's notice, leaving $10 million on the table, and started my own peacemaking practice in November of 2000, and never looked back. Best decision I've ever made in my life. And that's how it all started. My purpose in life is to teach people a simple skill that permits them to stop any fight or argument in between 90 and 120 seconds and do it with calm, confident compassion. Never be anxious again when somebody gets upset at you. Know exactly what to say and how to say it in every situation, and bring immediate peace to the room. It's the most powerful transformative skill I've ever seen or developed. And as far as I know, I'm the only one that teaches it. So who is this for? This is for any high-performing individual or team or even couple that faces tense moments, strong emotions, fights, arguments, difficult conversations, disagreements of any kind, who are seeking empowerment in those intense emotional situations so that they never feel anxiety or fear again, and have the utter confidence to know that they can walk into a room, no matter how intense, and calm it almost immediately with the skill sets that I teach. And I have developed these skills over 20 years, training murderers to be peacemakers and training senior analysts at the Congressional Budget Office in Washington, D.C., how to de-escalate members of Congress and staff, and everybody in between. I've taught tens and thousands of people how to do this, and it works every single time without fail. And the good news is it only takes about 8 weeks to master. So it's not like you have to put a huge life commitment into changing yourself. After I left the practice of law in 2000, I was making my living as a mediator and peacemaker, and I was getting called into high-end conflicts. These are conflicts where relationships are at stake, like family business conflicts, or estates, or trust disputes with beneficiaries, or business conflicts where business partners were arguing, or boards of directors couldn't get along with each other. And in all of these different conflicts, litigation was not an option because it would destroy the wealth. So I got called in to help bring peace to the table. And the one skill I did not have was how to calm people down when they were emotionally upset. I had spent a lot of time in my master's degree program studying what was then the nascent study of neuroscience, how the brain processes information. So I had a lot of knowledge, but not any experience, and nothing that my brilliant professors taught me in my master's program was effective in terms of calming people down. Active listening did not work. Nonviolent communication did not work. Taking a deep breath and counting to 10 did not work. Going outside and walking around the block did not work. Nothing that I had studied or learned about worked to calm angry people down until 2005. In 2005, I was asked to come into a mediation and asked to do it pro bono without any fees, which I agreed to do. And it was a couple who had been divorced for 20 years. The husband was suing the ex-wife over an $18,000 problem, and they had each spent $50,000 in attorney's fees fighting the problem. Classic problem. We came into the conference room. They were very well dressed. I introduced myself. I explained what the process was going to be. And as soon as I stopped talking, they started screaming vile insults at each other. If there were knives on the table, there would have been blood on the floor. And I sat to myself and said, what the heck am I going to do? And the thought came to me, listen to the emotions. So I went with it because I didn't have anything else to do. No other tools. So I started with Susan, and I said, Susan, listen to John and tell us what he's feeling. And I would have John tell his story. What's this all about? And in the beginning, Susan had a hard time with that. But within 5 or 10 minutes, she was able to look at what he was feeling and say, well, John's really angry. And I said, well, tell that to John. John, you're really angry. And I could immediately sense the temperature in the room calming down. She became empowered, and he got really quiet. So when he was done telling his story, I had them reverse, and Susan told her story, and John listened to and reflected her emotions. And when we were all done, there was dead silence. John put his face in his hands and started sobbing uncontrollably for a good 3 minutes. I mean, this was really a lot of stuff going on with him. I push the Kleenex box over to him. He blows his nose and he looks up across the table at Susan and he says, "That's the first time you've listened to me in 25 years." They settled a lawsuit, got up, walked out holding hands to have lunch with each other. You could have picked my jaw up off the floor with a forklift. I was so amazed. And that's how it started. And I didn't know it at the time, but I had engaged in a practice known as affect labeling or emotional validation, AFFECT labelling. 2 years later, a brain scanning study came out of Matthew Lieberman's lab at UCLA, University of California at Los Angeles. And Lieberman and his team scanned the brains of people who were being affect labeled, who were being emotionally validated. And they found something remarkable happening in the brain. When you validate another person's emotions, the areas of the brain associated with negative emotions, with the amygdala and other limbic regions in the brain, are inhibited. And at the same time, a part of the brain responsible for executive function, the right ventrolateral prefrontal cortex, is activated. So by the simple act of telling somebody what they're feeling, not only do you calm them down, you restore their ability to think. And the whole process usually takes 90 to 120 seconds. And that was the science that got me started on this. I had the practice, now I had the science, and I started developing it and practicing it, and then ultimately began teaching it. And then that led to the Prison of Peace Project. So the Prison of Peace Project came about from a letter that a woman serving a life sentence without possibility of parole in the largest, most violent women's prison in the world, located at that time in Chowchilla, California, not too far from where I live. She wrote a letter to a colleague of mine, Laurel Coffer, asking if Laurel would be interested in coming into the prison to train 100 women, all serving life sentences, how to stop the prison violence, because they were tired of it. Laurel called me on the phone at her mailbox and read the letter to me and said, "What do you think?" And I said, "I think we should do this." And the following year, that was in August of 2009, in April of 2010, we started training our first women, 15 women. And we developed this entire curriculum, taking people with zero skills all the way up to becoming professional mediators and peacemakers. And the foundational skill that we taught them was how to listen to emotions, how to affect label. And I want to share a story, an early story that really rocked my boat and told me that we were onto something really powerful. It was about the fifth week of training. We were going in once a week and training these women all day long. And it was the fifth week of training. We went in, and let me tell you, training in a prison is not like training in a corporate center or a hotel conference center. It's grim. You're not allowed any electronics. The security is intense. And we were in a really dingy, beat up conference room with just junk all over the place, filthy dirty. And we walked in, and one of our students, Sarah, was sitting in a chair quietly sobbing. And she was the first one in the room. So Laurel and I walked over, and Laurel kneeled next to her and said, "Sarah, what's going on?" And Sarah told us this story. She said, "I'm serving a 25 to life sentence because I killed a family of 4 as a drunk driver, and I've been in prison for 18 years. When I came to prison, I had to give up my 3-year-old boy to my sister to raise. And I have written him every single week since I've been in prison. I've never gotten a letter from him. He's never talked to me on the phone. He's never come to visit me. All I learn about my son is what I learned from my sister every week on a 15-minute telephone call I have with her. Last week, I decided to write a letter using the affect labeling skills you have been teaching us to validate his emotions. And I imagined all of the emotions he must feel from a mother who completely abandoned him because of her own selfish addiction to alcohol. And I wrote that letter. And today, for the first time in 18 years, I received a letter back from him. Now, in that letter, he was extremely angry. But at the end of the letter, he said, "Mom, I love you. I'm bringing my girlfriend. and we'll come visit you in 3 weeks. And then Sarah started crying again. And I started crying. I said, oh my God, what are we doing? And that was the first time that it really hit home how powerful these skills are. At some point in time, inmates really started bugging me about a book. I'm an author of 5 books, 4 books now. 5th book will be out next year. And that led to De-Escalate, my 4th book, published by Beyond Words, Atria, Simon & Schuster in 2017. And I began to think that I should teach these skills outside the prison walls. And so that's what I do today. The in-person prison work stopped with the COVID pandemic in 2020, and I am now devoting my time to teaching people how to do this. So who is my perfect client? Anybody who has to deal with any kind of difficult, uncomfortable situation. It could be fights or arguments. It could be a loss of relationship with a loved one, with children, or with a spouse, or with parents, or with siblings. It could be anybody who has to face difficult conversations. Or maybe there are these fights and arguments that keep coming up over and over again, and they never get resolved. Or maybe it's being uncomfortable when somebody else is upset and not knowing what to say to them, and you try to help them, you try to fix it, or you try to problem solve, and all you do is make things worse. We've all had these experiences. But if this is a situation for you that you would like to fix once and for all, then what I do in an 8-week coaching is teach you how to stop all of that and empower yourself to never be anxious around conflict or arguments or fights ever again. And if you're interested in learning more, then it's real simple. Go to LinkedIn and DM me, Douglas Noll, at Douglas Noll, DOUGLASNOLL, and put in the DM Martin25. And then I'll know it's from you, and I'll reach out and we'll connect. I'll get your email address, and I will send you my Peace Under Pressure kit, which includes a really cool ChatGPT de-escalation advisor, which will give you the exact phraseology to use in these situations. And it'll give you access to a course called Dealing with Anger and Aggression, which is a 4-week online course that I developed that will teach you how to deal with anger and aggression in your life. And then we can go further from there. If you want more coaching or more help, we can talk about that too. But I really want to offer that because my job today is to teach as many people as possible these skills and have these skills disseminated out. And what I like to tell people is imagine that every time we listen somebody into existence, we validate their emotions, we throw a pebble into the pond of peace. If enough people start throwing that pebble into that pond, we will have a tsunami of peace. And our culture will be changed forever for the positive.
'21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
Imagine a space where triumphs, trials, and tales of entrepreneurship come alive. Welcome to the 21st Century Entrepreneurship Podcast, a gold awarded journey hosted by Martin Piskarik, connecting with listeners in 95 countries and ranking in the top 0.5% of all podcasts. Join our exclusive community, elevate your perspective, and embark on the path to success.